AITA for quietly moving out after my parents charged me rent, but let my brother live rent-free? My name is Caleb. I am 22 years old, and like many young people my age, I dream of being successful. I am passionate about software design and am studying for a bachelor's degree in that field. In addition, I work part-time as a developer, and I save most of what I earn with the idea of starting my own company someday. That is why I continue living with my parents. The college is close to their house, which allows me to save on transportation and other expenses. Even so, I do not live at their expense. Every month, I pay $50 as my contribution to rent and household utilities. My life was going quite well, and I felt that in a few years I would be much closer to achieving my goals. Everything started to fall apart when my brother, who is 23 years old, decided to move back in with us along with his whole family. Don't get me wrong. I love my brother, but he has always been a problem. Since we were children, he was my parents' undisputed favorite. He had a special talent for getting into trouble. Breaking curfew, skipping classes, getting into fights at school. He always found a way to cause chaos. Even so, my parents always forgave him quickly. It didn't matter how serious the situation was. He received understanding and unconditional support. I, on the other hand, was left wondering what I had to do to deserve the same treatment. Somehow, he always managed to dodge the consequences, and many times the mistakes ended up falling on me. If he broke something or got into a mess, I was the one who ended up fixing everything behind him. My brother, Carter, got married when his girlfriend got pregnant. It all happened suddenly. One day he was talking about parties and nights out, and the next he was preparing to be a father. My parents were there at every moment, helping him emotionally and financially. They even supported him and his wife so they could settle down on their own, hoping that would make him more responsible. About a year ago, he and his family moved, taking a considerable amount of money from both my parents and his wife's family to start a business. Now that they have returned, the situation has only worsened. Carter claims his company is doing wonderfully, brags about contracts with large construction companies, and talks as if he were a great businessman. He says he is waiting for a payment of $2 million, exaggerating his supposed success every time he tells the story. I have serious doubts considering his history, but my parents didn't take long to believe him. They listened to him fascinated, nodding with admiration, as if he were giving a lecture. Meanwhile, I watched from a corner, feeling invisible inside my own house. When he announced that he had sold his house to invest in a big contract, I almost choked on my dinner. According to him, when the money arrives, he plans to buy a mansion in one of the richest suburbs of New York and even says the whole family should move in with him. My parents are delighted, convinced that this is the great achievement they always knew he would reach, without considering the risks. Meanwhile, he and his family contribute nothing to the house, do not pay rent, do not buy groceries, and have practically taken over the place. His children, whom I love because they are not to blame for anything, increase the disorder and constant noise. The house is always chaotic, very far from the quiet environment I need to study and work. I remember entering the living room dodging toys, feeling like I was in a disaster zone instead of my home. I used to value quiet moments to program, but now they seem like a thing of the past. My safe space was replaced by noise and disorder. The worst part is that my brother and his wife act as if they can give me orders, asking me for favors without offering anything in return. I feel more like a servant than a brother or a son. They have taken control of the kitchen, leave everything dirty for me to clean, and their children run everywhere, interrupting my concentration. It is exhausting to deal with their demands while trying to be responsible and build my future. Everything became even more unbearable last week when my mom came into my room. She started talking about how household expenses have increased since Carter returned. I knew where the conversation was going, but I was still surprised when she asked me to pay more money than I already pay. When I asked her if she had made the same request to Carter or if he would start paying rent, she got upset and left without answering. The next day, during breakfast, my dad told me exactly the same thing and got up from the table without letting me speak. I looked at Carter. He looked down with shame and continued eating. That night, after work, I talked to my mom and explained that I barely earn enough and cannot pay more. Since then, my parents practically ignore me. They treat me as if I were the freeloader, while my brother gets away with everything. What hurts the most is seeing the difference in treatment. I work, study, pay rent, and save for my future, but it seems that none of that matters. Sometimes I feel my efforts are invisible, as if I am never enough for them. For years, I thought that if I achieved more, they would finally value me. Today I am starting to accept that this approval may never come. I have tried to talk to my parents, but they always change the subject or ignore me. They are so focused on Carter's grandiose plans and his promises of wealth that they do not see what is happening in front of them. Do they not see how much it hurts to be ignored, work hard, and still feel insufficient? I have thought about moving out, but that would imply more expenses, and for now, it is not something I can afford. Update 1. Hi, I am Caleb again. I wanted to come back to tell you how my situation continues, since my previous post received many comments. Really, thank you for all the support and suggestions. I really appreciate reading your opinions, even those from people who disagreed with me. Many mentioned that I should simply move out, but honestly, I still do not feel ready to do so. I am still finishing college and trying to save for my future. And the idea of having to pay rent, utilities, and all expenses on my own right now causes me quite a bit of stress. I simply could not cover everything at this moment. Not only has the house become chaos, but my own room now looks like a zoo. I cannot explain how invasive my brother's family has been. For example, the other day, I went into my room and found my niece's bed set up in a corner. No one told me, no one asked for my permission, they simply placed a bed in my space. I understand that children need a place to sleep, but I did not agree to be their babysitter or turn my room into a makeshift dormitory. When I confronted Carter about it, he just shrugged and said it was easier for everyone that way. Easier for whom? Certainly not for me. And the situation became even more absurd. Yesterday, I found Carter's wife going through my things. I walked into my room and caught her looking inside my desk drawer. I felt completely invaded, as if my personal space was worth nothing. When I asked her what she was doing, she just smiled and said she was looking for a pen. A pen? There is a whole house full of them, even a desk downstairs. Seriously, she could not simply ask me for one? It was uncomfortable, outrageous, and very strange. I did not want to explode over something that might seem small, but the feeling was clear. They were treating my room as if it were a common area. That night, after a long day between classes and work, I just wanted a little peace to study. But as soon as I sat down, the children came running into my room, dragging toys everywhere. I love them, but I needed to concentrate. I tried to explain to them that my room was not a place to play, but it was like talking to a wall. They did not understand, and Carter did not even try to intervene. On the contrary, he laughed as if it were all nonsense. It frustrated me so much that he did not even set boundaries for his own children. The straw that broke the camel's back came when I heard Carter talking to our parents. I thought I could trust them, but I heard him say that I needed to be more supportive of the family in these difficult times. It was then that I understood they had been talking about my savings behind my back. I have been saving money with discipline for my future company, and hearing him say that made my blood boil. He had the audacity to suggest that I should hand over my savings, saying that he did not know why I was saving so much if I could use that money to help the family. Seriously. When I confronted him, he looked at me as if I were the selfish one. He argued that with the extra expenses of having them living here, it was my obligation to help. I could not believe what I was hearing. I have worked hard to build my future, and now he expects me to simply hand over that money because he made bad decisions. It seemed deeply unfair to me. I refused to feel guilty for wanting to protect my dreams. At that moment, I understood that I needed to set clear boundaries. I am not responsible for their decisions or their financial problems. I have spent years focusing on my own path, and I am not going to let them ruin it just because they think I owe them something. I took a deep breath and told Carter that I could not help financially and that I needed him to respect my space and privacy. I hope this leads to a better understanding, although honestly, I do not know if anything will change. For now, I stand firm in my decisions and prioritize my goals, even if that means facing more family drama. Thanks again for the support. I will update again if all this is resolved or if there is anything else to tell about my brother and the rest of my family. Update 2. I wish I could bring better news, but the situation has only gone downhill. If before everything already seemed complicated, now it has reached a point I never imagined. After my last update, The emotional manipulation by my parents went from being heavy to completely unbearable. It was no longer just about me paying a little more here and there. Now they openly expected me to hand over my savings. The money that was supposedly going to arrive from my brother never appeared, and every day a new way arose to pressure me to help the family. My mom repeated endlessly that family must support each other no matter what. And as always, everything revolved around Carter. That constant blackmail was completely wearing me down. The real bomb exploded a few days ago. My parents received a call from my brother-in-law. I was in my room trying to isolate myself from the usual noise of Carter's children when I started hearing raised voices. At first, I did not understand much, but the conversation escalated quickly. My mom was pacing from one side of the house to the other, clearly upset. I went down to see what was happening, and that was when the whole truth about my brother came to light. It turns out that Carter had lost everything quite some time ago. That supposed $1 million payment he said he was waiting for never existed. In reality, he had invested all his money in a dubious company months ago and ended up being completely scammed. The story of the big contract was nothing more than a well-constructed lie, and that was not the worst part. For months he had been living with his in-laws, taking advantage of them. When they finally got tired of the situation, they kicked him out along with his family. It was at that moment that he appeared at our house, inventing more stories about a success that never existed. I could not believe it. Part of me always suspected that his supposed business was too good to be true, but I never thought it was all such a big farce. Carter moved in with us because he had nowhere to go, and instead of admitting it, he decided to keep lying and drag us all, including me, into his disaster. I thought my parents would react with anger upon discovering the truth. I expected a confrontation, maybe even that they would finally realize all the excuses Carter had been inventing for some time, but the opposite happened. They were devastated in a way I did not anticipate at all. Instead of demanding accountability from Carter, they turned to me. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about how he had ruined everything, but about how I should step up and save the family. After the call, my dad sat me down and was direct. "Your brother is in trouble, Caleb. This is the moment when you have to help. You have been saving for years, and now it is your turn to give something back to the family. You can always start your business later, but your brother needs that money now." Hearing that was devastating. I find myself trapped in an impossible situation where whatever I do, I end up being the villain. If I hand over my savings, everything I have worked for will disappear, and I would have to start from scratch. But if I refuse, my parents will see me as someone selfish, cold, and ungrateful. And being honest, even if I gave the money to Carter, that would not solve anything. He has proven time and again that he cannot be trusted with anything related to finances. Deep down, I know that giving him my savings will not get him ahead. It would only be a temporary patch for a much deeper problem. So here I am, between a rock and a hard place, wondering what on earth I should do now. My parents do not stop pressuring me, and Carter continues acting as if he had done nothing wrong. Either way, I have a feeling this will not be my last update. Update 3. Today, I am finally moving out of my parents' house. I do not care what happens next. Maybe this will be my last update, I do not know, but I needed to vent completely. As you already know, my brother and, being honest, practically my entire family have been horrible to me. I reached a breaking point. Mom and Dad not only forgave Carter and continue allowing him to stay in the house, but they also continue pressuring me to pay more money and hand over my savings to help my older brother, the one who has always looked out for me. Supposedly. What does that mean? I am convinced of one thing. They are never going to change, nor are they going to listen to reason. Carter claims that now he really is taking life seriously and that he is ready to assume responsibilities. According to him, he has a new business idea with a friend and only needs a small investment, which he promises to pay back to me as soon as the project starts working. The only thing that should take off is him from the sofa to go look for a job. I do not understand how my parents continue believing him. He may still be the golden son to them, but to me, he is nothing more than a selfish person who only thinks of himself. Unable to continue dealing with all this, I made the decision to leave. Also, for now, I am going to keep it a secret. I feel that if I tell my family, immediately, they will do everything possible to stop me. I was looking for studios and rooms for rent, but none fit my budget. I need something I can pay for along with bills and food, and still continue saving what I can for my dream company. The good news arrived yesterday. A friend of a friend who is an immigrant was also looking for affordable rental options. I thought that if he accepted being my roommate, we could afford a small studio and split the expenses. This morning we finally met and talked about everything. To my relief, he had already found a place and just needed someone to share it with. The apartment is a bit far from campus, but that does not worry me. I can walk without a problem. The important thing is that the emotional torment and blackmail I have lived in my own home will finally be left behind. Tonight, I am moving out in secret. I cannot deny that I am curious to see their reactions when they discover that I am no longer there. Hope everything goes well. Wish me luck, guys. Update 4. Here is the promised update on what happened after I moved out in secret. Brace yourselves, because if you have been on my side from the beginning, this is probably going to make you quite angry. To recap a bit, after weeks enduring constant chaos at home, I made the decision to move out without saying anything. It was not impulsive. I had been looking for a place with discretion for some time, making sure it was affordable, relatively close to my work, and compatible with my college schedule. After quite a bit of effort, I found the ideal place thanks to a friend of a friend who needed a roommate. I told my family absolutely nothing. I knew that if I even hinted at my plans, they would fall on me with emotional manipulations, reproaches, and unnecessary scenes. So I moved everything quietly. I was packing little by little, storing my things in the trunk of the car, and waiting for the day when I could leave without confrontations. I wanted to leave, but without the drama I knew would come if I announced it. Finally, the day arrived. I had everything ready. I signed the lease and went to my new home. It was not big or luxurious, but it was mine, and that was more than enough. The first night in my own space felt like being able to breathe deeply after months of suffocation. The silence was incredible. Over the next few days, I continued with my normal routine, going to work and college as always. I knew it would not take long for them to realize I was no longer there, but I had no intention of saying anything until it was strictly necessary. And then the inevitable happened. One night, my mother called me to complain about some problems in the house and incidentally slipped in a reminder about the rent increase that, according to her, I had to pay. She asked me where I was and why I had not appeared at home in several days. She did not seem worried about me. The only thing that seemed to matter to her was the absence of my money. I could clearly hear the expectation in her voice, that usual assumption that I would continue carrying the economic weight. It was then that I dropped the bomb with total calm. I do not live there anymore. On the other end of the line, there was absolute silence. Then I added, enjoy the freeloaders now. The silence stretched a few seconds more before she exploded. She could not believe I had left without warning. She started saying that I was abandoning the family, that I was leaving them in financial ruin. She asked me how I could be so ungrateful and selfish after everything they had supposedly done for me. She made it clear that they were counting on my money to maintain the house, and that now I was leaving them just when they needed me most. But it no longer affected me. I was completely fed up with emotional manipulation, fed up with constant blackmail, and fed up with always being the scapegoat. My mother tried to pressure me in every possible way, saying that I had betrayed the family and that they did not know how they were going to get ahead without my contribution. I stood firm. I reminded her that for years I had contributed much more than my share, and that it was not my responsibility that Carter had ruined his own life. The following days were complicated for them because I blocked my family on all possible platforms. They even tried to contact me from an unknown number to tell me that at least I should continue paying the rent. Sure, of course, pay 2 rents when I can barely handle one. And on top of that, for a family that clearly does not care what I do or stop doing. Update 5. Here I am writing again because more things have happened. If it had been something minor, I probably would have left it at that, but everything related to my brother and my parents definitely deserves another update. I do not know how many people are still reading my story, but honestly, I think this is by far the most intense post I have had to make. And the funny thing is that in this part 1, I'm not even the direct protagonist. My parents appeared at the door of my apartment one night, and to make it even more dramatic, it was raining. I do not know if they checked the weather before coming to give the situation a more theatrical touch, or if it was simply a coincidence, but what happened next was quite ugly. There they were, standing on my doorstep, soaked, and saying they needed a place to stay. At first, it seemed strange to me because as far as I knew, they had their own house. I did not ask immediately and simply told them they could not stay with me. Besides everything that had already happened between us, there is the small detail that my apartment is very small. That, however, did not seem to worry them. In their mind, the plan was to stay in my room and have me sleep in the living room. Evidently, that plan had nothing to do with either the actual size of my apartment nor with what I wanted, which was not to live with them again under any circumstances. Before closing the door, I asked them why they were not at their house. What they told me next was difficult to believe. According to them, my own brother had kicked them out. Apparently, my mother discovered that my sister-in-law was stealing money from them, and being honest, it did not surprise me too much. I had already caught her before going through my things, and that excuse about the pen was never convincing to me. My parents confronted her and gave them until the end of the week to leave, but instead of leaving immediately, my brother got them tickets for a supposed show. While they were out, he changed the locks on the house. To make matters worse, the tickets turned out to be fake. They traveled to a nearby city only to be humiliated at the entrance when they were told the tickets were not valid. When they returned home, they tried to open the door with their keys, but they did not work. They pounded on the door, but the only response they received was a message from my brother saying something like, "Better us than you." After that, he did not answer again, although they were knocking on the door for almost an hour. That happened just a few minutes before they appeared at my apartment. I asked them why they had not called the police, and my mother told me they thought about it, but it was already late and they were exhausted, so they decided to come stay with me. I repeated to them that they could not stay. I told them that in any case, they could use the money I had been giving them for so long to pay for a hotel for a few nights. They protested, but I was already tired. I told them something very clear. I have a job and was paying rent in their house for years. My brother, who is not capable of keeping a job nor maintaining fidelity before having financial stability, has lived for free, and yet they demanded more and more from me. It was about time they held him accountable and not me. I thanked them for the visit and closed the door. I know some will think I was cruel for leaving my parents outside in the rain, but honestly, there was nothing else I could do. It is true that I do not want to live with them, but even if I had wanted to, there is no space for 4 people in my apartment. A few days have passed since all this. If my parents manage to get their house back, or if something else happens, I will come back to tell it. Update 6. My parents finally managed to get the house back, but not in the condition in which they lost it. And I am not saying it just because my brother and his family are no longer there, but because of all the damage they left behind. This is what happens when you allow irresponsible people who contribute nothing to take over your home. In addition to several items that disappeared, the house was left with multiple damages. There are walls painted senselessly. The upstairs bathroom flooded, causing significant damage, and some windows ended up broken. The general state of the house is much worse than anyone would have imagined. The only positive news, at least thinking about my nephews, is that Child Protective Services intervened. The children were removed due to clear negligence on the part of their parents. One of them fell down the stairs and broke an arm. And added to the fact that they took the house by force, the legal situation of my brother and his wife does not look good at all. I do not know what is going to happen to them from now on, but that is how things are at the moment. Despite everything, my parents refused to press charges against my brother. According to what they have told other people, not me, he did all that because he was going through a difficult time. Honestly, I no longer have words for my parents. At this point, I think they earned exactly what happened to them, and maybe even a little more. Update 7. For those who were worried about my nephews, this update is especially for you. The children have been taken to live with my parents. Child Protective Services asked me if I wanted to or could take charge of them being family, but I think you can imagine what my answer was. Personally, I still think my parents should have at least sued my brother. He had a car in his name, and with that, they could have recovered a part of the damages he left. But as always, my parents are capable of forgiving my brother absolutely everything, even after everything that happened. Very different from the treatment the black sheep of the family receives, that is, me. They have already cut off any kind of relationship with me permanently. The ironic thing is that, if I recall correctly, it was the other way around. But that is the version my parents tell anyone who asks about me. Although being honest, I do not think many are believing them, especially knowing that it was my brother who caused all the destruction. As for my brother, he is currently living inside that same car. And the truth is that it is not easy to find someone willing to let you stay in their house when you literally destroyed the last one where they gave you shelter. Comment. Watching Caleb walk away from a toxic environment reminds us that protecting your peace can be one of the bravest things you'll ever do. Setting firm boundaries isn't selfish. It's respecting yourself enough to say no when something hurts you. We often feel guilty for putting our needs first, especially with family, but you can't pour from an empty cup. Real love means holding people accountable instead of constantly shielding them from consequences. It takes immense strength to break a cycle of manipulation that has held you down for years. Your dreams and your mental health deserve to be prioritized just as much as anyone else's needs. A support system that values you for who you are is essential for your growth. Sometimes, walking away in silence is far more powerful than staying to fight a battle you can never win. I hope this story encourages you to protect your well-being and build a life where you feel truly safe. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.